Hi there, this is the third video in the little series of Who Are You in the Mind, using a cake and icing and cherries as an example. So we understand now the cake, the fruit and nuts is the who you are, that gives you the feels. The icing and the cherry is the mind, and it helps you understand and engage with the world around you. But often people forget about the who you are, they forget about the cake bit, and they get stuck up in the icing and the cherry part of themselves. They think that's all there is, and they start to have a bit of a bun fight and literally get stuck up there and start to throw cherries around, and it's all very big drama. People argue about the cherries, etc., etc., argue about the bits of glitter, and the cake, the actual who you are, sits there and think, what on earth is going on? So let me talk a little bit more about the who you are and what happens with lots of people. I call this in the online courses your energy dynamic, but to keep it really simple for now, because this is the first step, and what I'm wanting to do is to create a bridge between the energy dynamic model, which is here, and what people are saying now about the mind and who you are. I want to create a bridge, okay, between them. So when people are talking about the mind as in it's an illusionary thing, we have to leave our mind, it's like Plato's cave, we need to leave our mind, and we need to, some people refer to it as being more heart-centered. I don't really use that language because the energy dynamic model is a bit deeper than that, it's a level below that. But who you are and your feelings could be looked at as the heart area. It could be. As I said, it's one level deeper than that, but it could be. So a lot of people are saying the mind, you need to leave your mind, you need to come into heart, and you need to be authentic, you need to be who you are. I'm saying exactly that. I'm just saying that on a human energy level, I can teach you very simply the detail. And this video and the previous two are the bridge between that. So we're still looking at cakes and icing and cherries, all right? So what who you are is, that's what is. That's what is. The feels is how you experience it, okay? And the mind aspect, sorry, my camera's a little bit broken at the moment. And the mind aspect of it is how you emotionally react to that. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. So the who you are is what is. That's who you are. And your feels is how you experience that. And that is the cake, the ingredients of that big cake, okay? Who you are feels, okay? Big cake, robust, good feels, all right? And then the mind, the icing with the cherry, really is just to help you to engage with the world, normally by processing the information that the cake is experiencing, okay? It's different in nature. The mind has a different job, so it's different in nature to the cake. The cake is full and heavy and full of who you are, full of information, and the mind really should be quite light, quite clear, because it's just processing. However, that's, as I said, what I call your energy dynamic. Being in the cake and then just letting the icing and the cherries get on with their job is really how we're supposed to be. But it's very, very rare we are operating like that. It's very rare what is us is sitting in the cake. Very rare. What it's usually doing is it's popping up into the mind. The is of you, the bit of you that is you, often leaves the cake. One reason it does this is because of trauma. Another reason it does it is because of habit. Again, that's all in the book. It's all on the online courses. Not talking about that now because I'm talking about the concept. If you understand the concept and you enjoy the concept, look at the book, look at the online courses. So sometimes the bit of you that is leaves the cake because of trauma, maybe the cake's getting eaten, or because of habit. Everyone else loves their icing and their cherries, so I'm going to do my icing and my cherries. And the education system and the work system in the Western world are all geared to icings and cherries. Okay, So your environment, especially with the younger generation, is very encouraged to live in the world of icings and cherries and everything lovely and marvelous and extreme and emotional. So the best way to be what I call in the energy dynamic model over here, your optimal energy dynamic, but what we can call now is being in your cake, is you and your cake and the icing and the cherry fairly just sitting there processing stuff. Great. But as I said, people sometimes leave their cake and they go up into the icing and into the cherries and they start to look at that and they start to think that is who they are. They start to think that is what defines them. And you can see this all the time when people start to define themselves with their status, with their role, with their label, whatever. That becomes their identity. And actually their identity is not that. Actually their identity is who they are, which is actually in the cake. You can't get to the cake if you're in the icing and the cherries. It's different, completely different. But people do go into the icing and the cherries, and they love the icing and the cherries because of, as I said, trauma or habit. They're up there now. This is where they live. This is where they experience the world, and this is where they think that's all there is. They think that is it. They think it's all about your icing and your cherries. Okay. This is all in the book, by the way, and I'm going to do book readings about this topic, so keep an eye out for them as well. Anyway, so sometimes people, well, often actually, they go up into the icings and the cherries. Now, sometimes people then come down again. And if you notice, if people do things like grounding exercises, or they're playing music, or they're dancing, or they're loving, or they're doing something that gives them meaning and purpose, they kind of leave the icing and cherry world and they come down into the cake and start to feel good. So sometimes people go up and down, and that's great because they know the difference. So they know when they're up here being emotional and having their label and looking at their status, and then they do something, and then they think, oh, actually, I feel a bit grounded now. Now, the good thing about that is they know the difference, but the bad thing about that is actually we shouldn't even have to do that. Your whole life should be the cake, and that's what we talk about in the Energy Dynamic Model Academy, which is how to achieve this. But from a perspective of this video, that's kind of quite healthy because at least we know the difference, and at least we're going up and down. At least we do have some grounding. We can live in reality, in our body, in ourselves. Sometimes we don't have to go and be in the icing and the cherry all the time, and we think that's all it is. So that's another thing that happens. However, sometimes people get stuck up there for lots of reasons, normally trauma, normally some sort of learning difficulty, which is normally to do with some sort of toxicity somewhere, whether it be in food, whatever, environment, trauma, and biology. So sometimes they get stuck up there, and this can often lead to anxiety and anger. But as I said, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just habit. So those people, once they know they're in the mind, actually have a big opportunity to think, actually, I know I'm in my mind. No, I'll leave it. Because they didn't know that before. They thought icing and cherries was all there was. They had no idea there was a cake. They didn't know what a cake was because they've never experienced it. The Energy Dynamic Model Academy in the textbook really helps with that. So, and there's a special exercise we can do called Meet Your Mind. Once you've met your mind, you know what it is, you can then leave it. Once you leave your mind, you then can make friends with your mind and say, hiya, you're the icing, you're the cherry, I'm the cake, let's work together. Really reduces anxiety, really reduces anger, and you start to feel much more together inside yourself. So we've got people who live in the cake and are aware of the cherry and the icing. Hello. Some people go up and down and they are kind of unconscious, subconsciously aware of the difference, but they don't really understand it, and the EDM Academy can explain that in more detail. Sometimes people are stuck in the icing and they think that's all there is. Those sort of people, once they realise what it is, in other words, leaving Plato's cave, possibly, or leaving the illusion, all that sort of stuff that I'm hearing quite a lot now, which is really great. It's not an illusion, it is part of you, it is real, but it's not who you are, and it's not where you need to be living, all right? You need to be living in the cake, but in order to find the cake, you kind of have to come down. That's quite difficult. That's what I teach, and I teach it by showing you what your mind is, and I teach you to embrace who you are in a very simple way. And once we can learn to create environments where you can be okay in this real world, you'll find that your good feelings start to build up, and you'll find that you will naturally be able to stay in your cake much more often. And it's a game changer. Last point here is, so if you're stuck in your mind and you can't come out because of whatever reason, sometimes people then loop. So that's almost like they then leave their icing and cherries and they kind of go over here. So they're over here. They're related to the cherries and cherries and the icing, because that they know that's in their experience real. That's where they're real, and they can't come down into the cake because they just don't know it's there. It's too. They're either not aware of it, or it's too hard, too horrible, too nasty. And I am going to read you some excerpts from a book about this, and it might even, when I get my IT sorted out, at the end of this video, so that'd be great. So they kind of go over there, they kind of leave the icing in the cherries, maybe because they're fighting too much with other people, so other people are hurling the cherries at them and they're hurling their cherries back. Maybe they've run out of cherries. Maybe the icing's starting to melt, who knows, but whatever's happening there is not good, so they go over here, and I call that looping, because they're not in their mind, they're not in their cake, they're not in their who they are and their feelings, they're not in their mind, they're not in their cake, and they're not in their icing, they're over here. And that's when the mind starts to really control them, because, and I'll tell you why it starts to control them, it's because the person that you are is too far away, is too disassociated from either the mind or the feelings. So the mind has to become quite extreme, has to use quite emotionally extreme experiences to communicate with you, because you're too far away. So the further away you get, the more the mind shouts at you, the more the mind presses the emotions buttons, and the more your mind becomes a very difficult place to be around. But you have to be around it because it's your mind, and your mind is trying to guide you because you are here nowhere. So the mind's trying to help you. Okay, it's trying to help you, but it can't speak to you because you're too far away, so it uses all sorts of terrible emotions and terrible shouting noises to try and guide you. That's called looping. Lots more about that in the book. And what we do is we understand our mind, we understand who we are, we slowly, very carefully, in a kind and humble way, come back through our mind down into ourselves, and we start to experience life in a better way. Takes quite a while, got to be very careful doing it, but it's possible, and it's what I teach. So that's the end of those 3 videos. Hope you've enjoyed them. Do share, do keep watching, and I'm going to be, as I said, reading some parts of the book to explain these 3 videos in more details. Thank you very much. Catch you soon.